Hello and welcome back to Mystic Motivation. My name is Zoe Arnold. I'm a lunar glamour witch, and as you already know, we are going to be diving into the topic of goddess Aphrodite today in this video, talking about how you can connect with her. And I also wanted to talk a bit about my own journey with connecting with her. And I thought we would start there because I think that can give a lot of pointers of how, in your own journey of working with Aphrodite, how that might progress or how that might look for you. And so, as per usual, take what resonates, leave the rest. Everybody's experience will be different, everybody's viewpoint will be a little bit different, but this is my journey with Aphrodite. So, let me start with that, how I began working with her and how that kind of progressed. It started around September or around November of last year, somewhere around that time. And it was during a season where I was really just looking to connect deeper within myself and within my spirituality and my witchcraft practice. I was really trying to deepen and fully embody that. I was dealing with a little bit of imposter syndrome. I felt like at the time I was dealing with a little bit of just feeling like I was on the edge of something, feeling like I was on the brink of something. I was on the right path, but blindfolded. And it was just kind of this gray, foggy, confusing era for me. And so there was one specific night where I kind of sat with myself and I was like, let me just turn on some music, have a good time, move my body without thinking, kind of like a meditative practice of moving my body and trying to get out of my mind and just really embracing myself. And I was like, let me just fully embrace my magic here. Let me fully embrace myself as I am at my most potent magic. So I turned on the music, and while I was dancing, a specific song came on that was really relevant to me years ago during another kind of like confusing chapter of my journey. And it was the song Rose Lineage by Myra Stark. And I love that song in general. It's just really powerful. It's like a reclamation of self. It's very much giving like divine feminine energy, just really tapping in to your sovereignty. And it's, I don't know, it's just a beautiful song. And while I was moving my body to that song, I began moving my hands in a way that was really like as if someone had planned out a dance, just like almost like geometric, perfectly matching. I really don't know how to explain it, but it was like my body was moving as if like I had rehearsed and performed this dance before, and not in like that literal way, but it was just like just beyond anything I had experienced before. And so I told myself in my head, because I acknowledged it, I was like, don't overthink it. That'll take you out of the moment. Just keep going with it. And so as I was moving my hands like that, I just felt like power within. I felt happy. I felt joy, like when you want to laugh. Like I felt empowered. And from that moment, and it was like a split second, literally only a split second, at the base of my spine, I felt this huge surge of energy, just like this muster of energy, and it went all the way up into my head, and I just felt pure euphoric bliss. And it lasted a second, only a second, because it scared me, and I snapped out of it immediately. It was just unexpected. It was just a weird feeling. I overthought it, snapped out of it, and it actually kind of scared me. Even though it was a very good feeling, it scared me, and I had to calm myself down, turn down the music. It just kind of like, I was like, what just happened? And the only thing I had in my head after that was the name Aphrodite. And so that was just completely random to me. Like I was having a really strange experience, and then there was just like this bold, clear signal in my head, like Aphrodite. And so I think it was that night or the next morning. I think it was that night. I set up all that I had to create an altar with her, to connect with her. That was something I never done before, was try to connect to a deity. Literally never did that. I've only ever worked with spirit guides prior, worked with ancestors prior. So it was just kind of really going in blind. But I set up an altar and I was open to the message. I was like, I feel as though I got like a sign that you want to connect with me, and I can learn from your wisdom. And it really started there. And that was really the beginning. It was confusing as well as it was beautiful. And I just kind of deep dived into it. I didn't let myself overthink it. I would just sit and do little prayers and just open myself to it. And I remember I took a shower. I think it was like 2 days after that event, somewhere around there. And in the shower, I was just openly praying to her. And I was like, Aphrodite, like, I am welcome to your messages. Like, give me a clear sign so I understand if you're wanting to connect with me. And I list off several things. I was like, show me pearls, or show me dolphins, or show me bees. I was listing off correspondences, and I'll know that way that you're trying to connect with me. At that time, I had the altar for her in my bedroom, which is where my shower was. And so when I got out of the shower, I went to go grab my clothes to get dressed, and I had her altar in front of the window, and right above, and her altar's behind me now. So that little statue you see right there, if you're watching, it was right in front of the window. Right above her head of the statue was a bee just sitting there, and it sat there for hours. And I have like a set back porch, and I have not up until then, and for the years since that, have not seen like a bee like sit on the windowsill and just sit there for hours. It was a really strange coincidence right after asking for one. And so just little confirmations like that kept nudging me, like, keep nurturing this relationship, keep opening yourself, like dive into the unknown. And so I share all that to say that might be how your journey is beginning, right? Maybe you're here because you're already getting signs, or you just feel a call to work with Aphrodite, just maybe like an overwhelming feeling to you to do so. Or maybe, like I said, you've already received like a sign. My best piece of advice at the beginning, because it was like this for me, is like to not overthink it, to keep showing up. And I think that when you're trying to develop a connection with something that you've never developed a connection with before, it can be like confusing, and you're not going to know where to navigate, and you're going to want to ask people a lot of questions. In general, in my practice with anything, I've learned to just trust your gut. If you're respectful, if you've got good intentions, just trust your gut and go with that, because that's what's worked for me. And so what's interesting is it was no doubt like, it felt like an initiation of sorts when I began working with her, that looking back now, I truly believe that it was just meant to happen. And I still don't have all the answers of why, but it was only about a month and a half, maybe 2 months max, after I began working with Aphrodite, that I had, which she is the goddess of not only self-love, beauty, she also has her warrior aspect, right? But she is well known for being a goddess of fertility. She's worked with a lot in those ways. And so I experienced a miscarriage about a month, 2 months after beginning to work with her. And that was a really, really dark shadow period for me. That was a shadow period, that a type of depression and suffering that I really hadn't felt in a long time. And it was really, really hard for me to navigate. And for weeks, I was just depressed. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. It was a really bad experience, not only suffering the miscarriage, but also like how I was treated in the medical system. And it was just no doubt to me that she came into my life prior, almost with like, it comes across like this higher knowing that knew maybe that was going to happen, or who knows, it doesn't really matter to me. But either way, she was a guiding source during that time for me. And I truly look back with such like gratitude that I feel like if I didn't have that connection, it would have been so much harder. I would have been so much more lost, and I probably would have been in a depressive period even longer had I not kept looking to her as a guide and a source during that time. And it was like, she was the inspiration for me by showing up to my altar and praying and pouring my heart out. Like this, it's just like, it's something within you that just like aligns with that you're connecting to. And I just told myself, or maybe she sent it over to me, who knows, but like this knowing within that, like, I have to pull myself out of it. I have to do something to pull myself out of it. And so I started taking my health way more seriously. And I was like, if I'm already like, feel like I'm at a kind of rock bottom here and I don't know what to do, let me see what I can do with what I have, kind of magician card energy. And so I was like, let me start with my health. I started eating cleaner, and I started going for daily walks, and I started moving my body and getting back into fitness and working out, all with the intention of regaining my strength, like in my womb health, prioritizing my body, my relationship with my body, being more intentional with like how I'm treating my body. Because this isn't like something new to me. I first miscarriage, of course, but I've had like issues around my menstrual cycle, extreme pain, the type of pain where it's like you like you're bent over thinking you're going to die type pain. And I had gone to like gynecologists, and you know how the women's health is. It's like you don't really get a clear answer. It's not studied enough, and you're just like thrown birth control pills. That's the only option, which I think that is fantastic for a lot of women. But for me, anytime I've ever tried to take it, it just never worked. And so I made myself a deal. I was like, this miscarriage was kind of the final straw of like, if I can't fix this myself, then I can try something that I'm kind of a little resistant to personally, which is birth control. So I've been on that journey since, and my health has improved so much that it's actually insane to me. My menstrual cycle is not perfect, but I can actually function on day 1, day 2. Normally those days I'm completely bedridden. It's still painful, right? But it's like I'm coherent. I can actually get up. I can actually do something if I need to, which is complete day and night to where I used to be. I used to be completely immobilized. Is that the right word? Just not able to do anything. And so long story short with that, it was clear to me that she came in. That was part of why she wanted to work with me so much. It's like the reclamation of my health and taking that more seriously, which is a lot of my direct connection with her. But it bled into other areas as well. Once that got better and I learned to keep working towards that and keep doing things that works to improve that for me, and making that kind of like my ritualistic aspect to her. Like I don't just work out, like that's a devotional act to her. Oftentimes I'll work out right in front of the altar. You know what I mean? It sounds a bit funny, but like it's a way to blend my practice connection to her, building that relationship at the same time that I am doing something for self. And so it just bled into other areas as well. She brought up a lot of my shadow and realizing that how many wounds I had around visibility and fully expressing myself, seeing myself as somebody worthy of like investing in my style, or like even just the way I think of myself is actually allowing myself to be like, I am beautiful in my own unique way. And like, I am somebody that's like worthy of this or that, and all those types of things. And so she's really enhanced I feel like when I look back at myself a year ago, like my style looks better. I look more true to self. I look happier. I think I have grown up, not only health wise, but just I feel more like myself. And I think that she came into my life to teach me that as well. So she's really deepened my glamour magic practice, deepened my self-worth, and also just the way that I show up for myself. So that's a bit of how my journey with her began and what it's led towards. And so I kind of took my time there explaining that, but I did want to share it with the point of like, it will look different for each of us, and you might relate to some of what I said. And that is something I think she's wonderful for. I would truly recommend, if you struggle in any area from like fertility to self-worth to beauty to visibility, I think Aphrodite is such an empowering source for that to, and we'll talk more about it in a second here, but to surround yourself in her energy and with like what she represents to help you work through that. So again, we'll get there in a minute. But I did want to talk about a little bit how I perceive Aphrodite, because I think this will help people who may struggle like I did, in not only when I first began working with her, but in general, way back like 2019, when I first started my spiritual journey, with how you perceive mystical experiences that you're having. I think as humans, we have this natural desire and need, not all of us, but a lot of us, to really understand what we're working with or seeing or understanding, and we want to have an answer. It's the same like reason why people go to like religions for like an answer of what happens when we die, because a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the truth that like nobody knows the full story. Nobody really knows, and you won't know until like it's your time to go. And so I've learned that approaching my practice with not only Aphrodite, but spirituality in general, with a comfortability of the unknown, makes it a lot easier for me. So for example, let's take it way back 2019. When I first started my spiritual journey, I would say looking back, I was very ungrounded, but I was having a lot of mystical experiences because I was kind of thrown into the deep end, the same type of story where it was a deep shadow period, and like I was overwhelmed with the amount of information I was receiving and the amount of mystical experiences I was experiencing for the first time, with no resources, with nobody that could give me an answer. And spiritual talk wasn't as big as it was now. Like it wasn't as accessible as like it is now. And I was just kind of thrown in blind. And so whenever I would have a mystical experience, I would really latch onto it, is the best way to explain it. I would really try to, how do you explain it, is like overly latch onto, this must be 100% real and I must know everything about it, right? Like when I started working, to make this make sense, I feel like that didn't make sense. When I started working with Aphrodite, what I've learned over the progression of my spiritual journey is that it doesn't matter to me if Aphrodite is an actual autonomous deity that has a whole functioning experience and with reality outside of working with me. Like if she is a fully autonomous goddess that truly has lived her stories and myths and truly is aware of me as I am aware of her, or if she's just an energy that's been encapsulated by people that just represents love, beauty, fertility, that we kind of call upon. We turn her into an archetype, as it means to make it energy, as it means to make it easier to work with that energy, to call upon that energy. Or if it kind of playing into that, it's like a placebo effect thing. It actually doesn't matter to me. And I think that might be like a hot take, or not a super common take that you hear in like maybe witchcraft or spirituality in general, but I think that's helped me a lot. I genuinely mean that when I say like it doesn't matter to me, any of those answers. All that matters to me is that it works for me. That I don't have to know all of the answers of what Aphrodite fully is, what this existence fully is, what these things are. I can let myself kind of, as a person that leans a little too logical sometimes, and someone that also leans maybe a bit too mystical at times, to kind of be in the middle and be like, actually, either way, I'm good. Because I can't deny the mystical experiences that I've had, which tells me that I am interacting with something and it's interacting with me. At the same time, that it's true that like when I work with Aphrodite, it's not like she's right here and I'm like talking to her and like I can get an immediate answer. So it's fine with me to not fully understand. And I think that can be helpful, especially to those who are beginning to work with deities in general, goddess Aphrodite. Allow yourself to just show up and commit to the process, because I think you'll find your own personal answer. It probably won't be like mine, or maybe it will, but you'll find your own personal answer that works for you within that over time. And for me, it works because like I treat like my spiritual practice, my witchcraft, my connection to Aphrodite the same as I do with any other relationship in my life. Of course, I should show up and give offerings. Of course, I should show up and give thanks and put intention in my heart into it, because I would want someone to do that to me. I would want to do that to nature. Nature deserves that. We're a part of nature. We show up that way for animals. We should care for each other. So even when it comes to something that's like non-physical, it's a higher being, it's a higher energy, we should have the same approach of that natural instinct we have to be reciprocal, to build relationships, to be caring, to be thoughtful. And so it's natural to embody that and to look at the history of the people who have given offerings to Aphrodite, who have built temples in her name, who have shown up and devoted their lives to her even. Like it makes sense to me that we're kind of programmed to think that way with the things that we engage. And that's helpful in my, I don't fully understand everything, yet it makes sense to still show up this way, if that's making sense. What matters is that I feel the connection. What matters is that you feel the connection, that you experience benefit. And if your practice changes, as mine has so much from like I said at the beginning, what I was trying to explain earlier is that I would overly latch onto these things being real, is what I was trying to say. And I think in the way that my journey has developed, I've learned to take things more simply. I think that's why on my social media that I've made like a lot of my posts around like spells made easy, that series I do, like here's how you can make these easy, simple. I've learned in my practice to go with the flow, to not over question things, and to make them very simple and reduced as a means to make my practice in magic more potent, because it leaves more room for education. It leaves more room for seeing the full scope of things, rather than being very like, I've just always been attracted to like the scales of justice, like we're seeing 2 points of view. seeing two ways. And then if you can see two separate ways and still be able to bring them together, then there's truth in that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is what I feel like you're truly here for, which is why you might want to work with her and how you can begin working with her. So some common reasons people work with Aphrodite, I touched on earlier a bit. Fertility, of course, in any way, shape, or form. Whether you are somebody who wants to get pregnant, you are somebody who has experienced a miscarriage and you're trying to heal from that, and maybe you have a means to eventually get pregnant. If you're somebody that's wanting, that could be taken another way, like fertility within your abundance, things you're trying to call into your life, things you're trying to grow, right? There could be many different ways of that. You can work with her in regards to self-love. Maybe you already have a good self-esteem, but you want to expand that. Maybe you want to get more comfortable with a new version of yourself you're growing into. Or maybe you want to embrace more of the shadow work around self-love and you're really working through some more heavy stuff about your perception of self. She is fantastic for any of those areas. She is great for light and dark. She's often perceived as this very light, soft energy, but she rules over Libra, and she does have that very dual energy, like this Aphrodite. When you connect with her, what I've seen in the mystical experiences I've had with her is that it is both doe and warrior. That was like a message that came through one time when I was sitting at the altar with her, and I actually have it written on a little post-it note over there, or postcard. Both doe and warrior. You can obtain that not only within yourself, you can soften the experiences and the traumas you've been through at the same time that those have made you stronger. But you don't have to use those things as a defense mechanism. You can soften and know that you can tap into yourself when need be. And I think that's a great way to explain her energy. You can also work with her in regards to connection and visibility. So if you're calling on love in your life, or you're calling on more authentic relationships or better clients, or if you're just trying to get more comfortable with being seen in your relationship and friends and family and your business, whatever it is, she's fantastic for visibility, confidence, empowerment. I already talked about this, but I wrote here too, that shadow work, her warrior side, her duality. We just talked about that. You can work with her in really any kind of shadow work, because most shadow work is in relation to the way you view yourself and see yourself. I think those are some of the biggest ways to work with her. And she's really beautiful to just incorporate into your life for really embracing the full scope of who you are. And of course, working with her within your magic as well. So simple ways to begin, again, keeping it easy. You could set up an altar, and that altar does not have to be super impressive. It can be things that fit her proper correspondences, such as pearls, seashells, water, pinks and purples and reds, blues and greens. It could be mirrors. It could be roses. It can be traditional like that, or it's just creating an altar for her that represents things that really have meaning to you, that you really love. For example, my altar behind me, it does have all of those traditional correspondences, but I've also placed like a lot of things that just mean something to me, like the lipstick I wore on my wedding day, and jewelry that has a special meaning to me, perfumes that represent something special, or the smell is really nostalgic. You can place things on the altar that represent like love, and that's enough, and that's great. And you can show up to that altar and you can leave little prayers, poems, songs. You can recite her Orphic hymn as a way to call upon her and connect with her, and just as an offering. And those are great offerings in general. Really, I found that with Aphrodite that even if you have an altar or not, it doesn't matter. She appreciates things with intention, meaning, and love, whatever that means to you. It's also a great way to connect with her, is to learn her stories. You can read her myths. I think this is a great way to see how she's become the goddess of love. You can't become a master of something without experiencing like the opposite. And in a lot of her stories, there is a little bit of chaos. There's drama, there's infidelity. And I think it represents how like this a reflection, right? She rules over Libra, of like how you can go through difficult things. And then if you choose to go within and climb back up that mountain, you can come out like a master. in a lot of areas. And I think her myths kind of shine light on that. And then just research in general, just look into other people maybe that work with her. But I'll say that research is important, but what's more important, like slightly more important, is showing up and practicing yourself, right? Research is very important, but you want to not do things fully based on what somebody else does. You want to do what feels right in your heart. And that's why I went on that tangent earlier of like why it's important to not overly intellectualize the mystical sometimes, and let there be a little bit of unknown, a little bit of uncertainty within yourself, and knowing that that's okay, and to keep following your heart and intuition anyways, right? Again, with the scales, your mind and your heart, bringing them into balance. One doesn't have to overly be, if we place our heart too much belief, too much certainty, too much this, that can leave no room for understanding, a healthy amount of understanding and a healthy amount of like thinking. And then the reverse can also be confusing when trying to work with anything mystical, in this regards, it being Aphrodite. Another great way to work with her that's really simple is you can set a vanity like I did. I put a mirror there. So every day when I do my hair and makeup, I'm sitting in front of Aphrodite. It's an opportunity to add my day-to-day things to connect with her. So it's easy. I could just sit there and go ahead and pull an oracle card and connect with her, light some incense, spray some perfume, and talk to her, to talk about what I'm working through, what I'm working towards, or just to talk. And that builds that connection. And I think that would be my best beginner tips to working with Aphrodite. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It doesn't have to be super impressive. And you could choose whether or not you ever want to do a spell or a ritual welcoming Aphrodite in. I think that's more down the road. You can look at that. But that would be my best tips. Take your time. I was definitely confused at first, but what I've learned is like if you leave yourself open to the connection changing, and you leave yourself open to change, man, will you really transform? You'll really transform. I appreciate you guys being here. I would love to hear back from you. What questions do you have? How have you been connecting with Goddess Aphrodite? Have you had any experiences? And I'm happy to answer any further questions. If you're not already, be sure to like this video, to subscribe to this podcast. I have new videos every Thursday. And if you'd like to work with me deeper, you can check out my website, link in bio. I also have an online coven. So the online coven, our group chat is completely free to join on Discord. You can connect with other witches there. You can ask questions, share your journey. And then if you choose to, you can also join our membership, which is where we do a virtual gathering each month where we actually go through sacred practices, spell work, self-care. We deep dive into different topics within witchcraft history and lore. We do all kinds of stuff there. You also gain access to a library of online resources, of workbooks, video courses, and meditations that I've created. And it's just like a really cool space to show up and deepen your witchcraft journey. So if that interests you, I'll put more details and a link down in the caption below. And you can also go to the link in bio to check out my other services. Thank you, witches, for being here, and I'll see you back here soon.